This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
How to have fun anytime, anywhere. Step 1. Go to ChumbaCasino.com.
ChumbaCasino.com. Got it.
Step 2. Collect your welcome bonus.
Come to Papa welcome bonus.
Step 3. Play hundreds of casino-style games for free.
That's a lot of games. All for free?
Step 4. Unleash your excitement.
Woohoo!
Chumba Casino has been delivering thrills for over a decade. So claim your free welcome bonus now and live the Chumba life. Visit ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Just in case you missed it, it's the top 5 sports talkers of the day. Now, it's time for Dan Barrero's Top 5 at 5. Brought to you by Gutter Helmet of Minnesota. Never clean your gutters again. Learn more at gutterhelmetmn.com.
It is interesting looking at that Gopher box score from, what did I say, 1973?
Yes.
Under putouts, Buettner, the catcher, had 15. As in strikeouts. They must have counted it back then, putouts, as if you're the catcher, you're catching the ball in a swing and a miss.
It's very confusing.
So it's a strikeout. Yeah, he had 15 putouts in the game. I don't think they...
Stat stuffer, big box score?
I guess. I don't think they do that anymore on strikeouts. Louis, in about 30 minutes, what do you have for top 5?
Let's get to Finchy. Let's make sure, because he had some very long answers in the conversation in studio with Paul Allen today. If you want to podcast it, Paul Allen channel of your iHeartRadio app. First of all, just kind of how he feels, where the team is at the moment in the grand scheme of what we call the NBA and being a championship contender.
Right now in the game, it's about getting to the table enough times, and that's what we got to keep trying to do. You know, maybe you punch through one time, and that's all it takes. I mean, look at Boston's run over the last 5-6 years. I mean, they've gotten there. They had a knockback in there, and then they finally punched through last year.
Yeah.
And then this year, you know, everything changes again. You know, on a horrific injury. So I think we understand like the challenge that's there, and the challenge is to try to get back and do it all over again. But it's like any other death, for that matter. Like when a season's over, you go from 100 miles an hour to 0.
Yeah.
And that is, you know, everyone processes that a little bit differently. And at that point in time, I'm like, there's not anything else I can do now going forward. But your mind is always racing with all the things you need to do differently when you start next year. You know, but I think you need this healthy detachment from it, because during the season, it just never stops coming. It's a long season.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I feel like when you're as close as we have been, you know, we know there's things we got to get right and get better, but, you know, now you're hungrier than ever.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's... He's right to the extent that he's right, and I think he's wrong. The challenge is you try to keep getting back to that place, waiting to punch through. But I also think that just because maybe the Celtics, as an example, didn't keep making changes and just hung in, that I don't think that necessarily means that every team must do it the same way. It's the tricky, I guess you could say, challenge of threading the needle about what's necessary to tweak. We can honestly say, well, we got to the Final Four 2 straight years. What do you want? When internally you may say, guys, we got to stop kidding ourselves. Our internal work indicates we got a couple of issues that if we don't get better in these areas or resolve them, maybe from a change in personnel, maybe for growth, from just internal growth, we're not going to keep going back, and we're going to be kidding ourselves. That, to me, is what the best teams do. They don't lie to themselves, and they don't always hide behind let's not panic here. Let's just keep going back to the well. And that gets back to Tim Conley. I would put it this way. I will be more surprised than not if the Wolves don't make one significant change to the roster before this season.
I think you're right.
I think my gut tells me that Conley believes that that's necessary. Now, that's not the same thing as if you literally brought it all back, that the team would fall off the edge of a table. But my gut tells me there's going to be something, because even if the Durant thing is a pipe dream and doesn't end up happening for whatever reason, and even if the Garland thing never really goes anywhere, I still think this team wants to create some kind of a buffer zone at the point guard position. The question is who that is, how that might be brought about, what kind of trade, what you're going to give up doing it, etc. And I think the piece, now he's not a main piece, but, and I'm not happy saying this, because when the Wolves made the deal, DiVincenzo to me was the key to it, and allegedly that was the key to the Wolves saying yes, because up until the last minute, the Knicks wouldn't include him in the deal. But Dante has disappointed me a little bit. And maybe it's an overreaction. Maybe in year 2, like with Randall, maybe it'll actually be better. Maybe he knows he's here from the beginning. It was a late entry last year. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if he ends up getting traded. And here's the irony, too, and this is how it can change. Did you hear who Magic Johnson said was the key reason why the Knicks didn't make it to the NBA Finals?
I didn't hear it.
It wasn't Tibbs, in his opinion. It wasn't Cat, in his opinion. It was that Dante wasn't on the team anymore. So he went with the old... That's interesting. Dante gave them that extra edge where they were a little feistier, and they weren't feisty enough. They were too, finessey. And so it just goes to show you that, because I would say, in theory, I would want to agree with them, but on the basis of what I saw from Dante this year, there were too many times where I was a little underwhelmed. I didn't think I got the consistent, you could say edge or whatever else, that I thought that the Wolves were going to get when they made the deal.
Streakier shooter than I thought.
Yes, that's true.
He could heat it up for a week.
And who warned me on that? I can remember, because I got mad at him because I was so excited about him being included in the deal. Gary Myers texted me, said, one thing I got to tell you about Dante, when it's going good, but he's very streaky.
Interesting.
And he was. In fact, I'm going to look it up. I don't even think his overall shooting percentage was that good at all.
I'll give you 2 quotes, not the full sound, and then one more soundbite, about 2 minutes on Anthony Edwards.
Okay.
On if he expects Naz and Julius to be back next season. Absolutely, yes. I think both players want to be here. That's first and foremost the most important thing. We certainly want them here. I know Tim Conley is working hard to make sure that they get some sort of deal done that makes them happy and want to stay and feel gratitude that the team is taking care of them. He also mentioned on your guy, TJ Shannon, Terrence Shannon Jr., next year, obviously, he is going to be a significant part of our rotation.
Oh, he did say that. What about Dillingham? What about Dilly?
I don't know if he came up today. I didn't listen to the entire hour, but I did listen to this on what Anthony Edwards needs to do this summer.
He's always looking to add to his game. I do feel like we could use him down in and around the post a little bit more, but we've got to kind of clean up his footwork, help give him a plan down there. I think he can be really good at it. I know he's excited about adding that. For me, priorities for Anthony in the off-summer are kind of going back to who you were a few years ago, like getting back to playing a little bit more in the open floor, playing a little bit faster, get your finishing back to where it was. He had a subpar finishing year, and that's been probably just an outlier. But hey, you got to put the work in. Sometimes you just got to get back to kind of your the foundation that gave you the opportunity to be who you are.
So that means beating somebody or working the right way off the pick and beating somebody, going to the basket, and that finishing point.
Yeah, like he getting to the basket's never been a problem to him. Just his finishing this year, he just didn't finish well. Just like you have a bad shooting year, you had a bad finishing around the rim year, but we feel that'll bounce back strong with just the right amount of maintenance. It's like anything else. He's going to be good at it because he's been good at it in the past. I think in that foul drawing will also kind of will go up. He'll continue. He did a really good job from January on drawing fouls, but in the first part of the season, didn't draw fouls at the level that he should. And so he did a really good job in the middle of the season of course correcting and building on that. And I just, he's going to continue to face multiple bodies, multiple lines of defense. So the faster that he can play, get out and stretch the floor, get out and transition a little bit more, add some easy baskets to your game. I think those are things that are kind of low-hanging fruit that he can get back to.
Good answer. I like that answer, and I think it does make a lot of sense. But I still think, and I don't know if this was covered, he was in better shape this year than last year, but I think he's still got to get in even better shape.
I'm with you.
And that would make it easier to get into that open court thing and make some stuff happen there. But he's got to become, there's no reason he should not be a better finisher. DiVincenzo this year, 42.2% from the floor. That's not good enough. But he only took nine and a half shots a game, right? So from 3, 39.7, which isn't bad.
That's not terrible.
Which is not terrible. 11.7 points in 62 games for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So, I like I said, for Ant, and I don't know how far they went down this road either, the point guard thing is really now is becoming, I think, the elephant in the room, that they have to make some changes there, but then you have to find an answer. And the ideal would be Dillingham has the best offseason in history and comes back a player who we don't even recognize, right? Who just makes a big jump. It happens sometimes. But the problem is, did he play enough last year for it to be realistic? To think there's going to be that kind of big jump, I think that's unlikely.
If you'd like to listen to the entire hour with Finchy and Paul Allen, as I mentioned, it's available on the Paul Allen channel on your iHeartRadio app, which is free and very easy to use. And you can even make PA or bumper to bumper a preset.
Even better.
And just flip back and forth throughout your day. It's a beautiful thing. Real quick, both local teams back in action tonight, Twins and Lynx. Twins are on the road. If the playoffs started today, Dan, your Minnesota Twins would not be in them.
Yeah.
They're a half game out of the final wild card spot because they have hit a bit of a dry spell. We've talked about the injuries the whole bit. They're 36-35, taking on the 37-35 Cincinnati Reds. David Festa on the mound, opposing Andrew Abbott, and the Lynx are hosting Vegas. The Aces tonight, should they win, a game you can hear on the Timberwolves Lynx channel of your iHeartRadio app, they will make the Commissioner Cup final for a second straight year. So there you go.
You love the Commissioner Cup. You can't get enough of it.
Well, the Wolves never give us the payoff in the NBA Emirates Cup. The Lynx hoisted the Commissioner Cup a year ago. There's a banner at Target Center, and they've got room on the banner for more years. That was the whole point of the banner. So get it done tonight against Vegas, and let's play.
Luigi at the bottom of the hour.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. New customer offer for first 3 months only. Speed slow after 35 gigabytes if network's busy. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
This would be considered the ultimate challenge for a relief pitcher. Elimination game World Series. You walk in, trot on into the mound, bottom of the ninth of a 6-6 game, bases loaded, and nobody out.
That's high leverage.
Don't they call that high leverage in the business?
I believe that's the highest of leverage.
I don't think it could get any higher, could it? Man. By the way, there's, I think, a lot of speculation and trepidation and speculation as it pertains to the Middle East. And the President of the United States came back early from the G6/G7 summit, basically saying, I got to meet in the war room. Let's get it all together. Let's get the band back together. And the assumption is the discussion has to do with how interested the United States is going to be in supplementing the Israeli effort to snuff out the quest in Iran for a nuclear weapon, correct? And the feeling is that a lot of the damage that's been inflicted has been significant already, but that there's one location that is deep underground and that Israel does not have either the bomb or the method of transport to get it there to more likely take care of that particular part of the nuclear program. U.S. has the ways and means. They have the mother of all bombs that allegedly could get that done. And the question is, do we do it? And what happens next? It's a subject that we will explore in more depth tomorrow with our counterterror big knocker, Mike Hurley, who's not been on the show for a long time. He's Minnesota's own, Edina's own, no longer lives here, still has family here, and occasionally does come back and has come into studio to see us from time to time. We're going to check in with him tomorrow at 4:30 to get his view on the current state of affairs in the Middle East, what the Israeli endgame is, what his own thoughts are regarding the nuclear program, how much certainty can there be that the program has been set back enough for at least people to breathe more easily in the short term. Apparently, according to published reports, one of the difficulties is a disagreement between U.S. intelligence officials and Israeli intelligence officials about how far along Israel was. Now, President Trump has, I think, a couple of times basically said, get out of Tehran. Whatever you do, get out of Tehran. It's over. Just go. You could have signed a deal. You didn't sign a deal. We're not talking about a deal anymore. It's over for you. And I haven't seen, I've got CNN on right now on the one of the computers because I can't find the remote here to change channels. And they're not, they're actually talking about other things like a Senate GOP hits roadblocks and push to pass the Trump agenda bill, which would indicate there's nothing urgent taking place at this very moment, right? But that's the open question, and it's worthy of some discussion, and we'll get to that tomorrow. In fact, tomorrow's going to be a very busy program, and it's over. Looks like a
Louisville wins.
Sac Fly wins it, if I'm not mistaken.
Devastating for the Beavers.
Got to be tough for Oregon State. Yeah, nice comeback to get back in the ball game, and they lose it, and they're out. This was an elimination game, so Louisville advances.
It's a long flight back to Corvallis.
You know it. You've lived it.
Yeah, even from Omaha, centrally located in the middle of the country. Very easy to get to.
Very, very true. So Hurley tomorrow. John Millay, a former colleague of mine at the Star Tribune, who's been, writing about via the Minnesota State High School League, basically prep stuff for how long has he been doing that job?
The high school league, I feel like it's like 15 years.
Is it that long?
Yeah, it's longer than you'd think.
The original plan was he was going to be in studio because he's retiring.
Yes. He just wrapped up his final
Speaking of retirements, we had Bozich last week and Millay this week, and he was originally going to be in studio yesterday. And then obviously we felt compelled to talk about a lot of the tragic weekend in Minnesota for obvious reasons. So he was kind enough to move to Wednesday. So he's going to be in studio tomorrow. Hurley will be by phone tomorrow. Kessler, I'm assuming,
yes,
will be in studio tomorrow as well.
Millay's title with the high school league was media specialist.
Media specialist,
I think it was.
Yeah.
And Bozich kind of hit on it a little bit when we talked to him about, because that's how he started. That was one of his first writing jobs, right? Covering high schools.
That was my first writing job.
Yeah.
When I started writing for the Louisville Times, it was going to like southern Indiana, podunk towns on a Friday night covering a football game. No question about it.
And I liked what Bozich said. Well, first of all, I think it's reversed because Bozich talked about how that's how he felt like he got to know the town that he was living in by doing the high schools. And this is what this neighborhood does. These are the traditions here. And here's the road I have to take and all that. Like, I think it works conversely. Like, I think, obviously, I'm biased. I had coached high school, played high school. My sister, same thing. I think it's such an important part of a newspaper or of a town, right? At a local level. And he spent, I don't even know how much of his career he spent doing preps, but it had to be a lot of it, right? At the paper. And then obviously he changed midstream to go do that. I just think it's a fascinating
Well, I'll give you an example.
Life.
So when I had my first sports writing beat opportunity, we were both at the Louisville, the Courier-Journal and the Times were like one operation, kind of. The Times was the afternoon paper. Kids, once upon a time, there were newspapers that literally came out in the afternoon, almost like an update for the morning newspaper. The Courier-Journal was the morning paper in Louisville, and the Times was the afternoon paper. So he starts covering preps in Louisville, the Louisville metropolitan area. The beat that opens up is because of the proximity to the Indiana border, the Louisville Times had a Southern Indiana bureau, so they had a person cover Indiana University sports on a regular basis. That became my beat. And when it came open, because Bozich is the kind of guy he is, I said, you should go for it too, and let's see what happens, because I know you like covering colleges. And he said, no, I'm already got the high school stuff started. You want to do it, just go ahead and do it. And the rest is history. That's what I started covering. So making a lot of trips back to Bloomington, Indiana. But I do remember before that, as I said, doing a decent amount of prep stuff. And again, it's harder for all the obvious reasons, right? Statistics aren't all handed to you.
Right.
It's your stuff isn't brought to you. You got to go find stuff. In the cases, this was Southern Indiana. You're driving all over the place to some of these small towns to cover high school football in September, on a Friday night. But it does teach you, because it's so much more challenging, that you got to go out and find stories. You got to talk to more people, et cetera. And I think that's what he learned. And I'm sure Malay will talk about that too. It does mean more, I think, to people who are invested in it for all the obvious reasons. Younger kids, right? You like to think it's purer.
For sure.
At that level. And the tricky thing is, historically, the way newspapers have looked at it, though, is there's a place for preps. We have to understand that, generally speaking, people tend to be interested mainly in their own high school's sports stuff, so we can't devote as many resources to it. There's a broader audience for, let's say, University of Minnesota teams, so that's why we devote more attention to that. What the Star Tribune is indicating is, on the basis of their digital stuff, is that they think
they're doubling down.
It's
again.
the opposite.
Yeah.
That actually some of the biggest numbers they get, well, Vikings certainly, and high school sports, which is interesting to me, because usually it's not as broad. It's, I'm going to be interested in a high school story if it's about the high school that my kid plays at or goes to. But that's what they're doubling and tripling down on. And you can even see it when you go to StarTribune.com in the sports section. Almost invariably, the first 2 or 3 stories on the grid are high school stories.
Yeah.
Which is, again, contrary to what local newspapers have done, which wasn't to ignore high school stuff, to make it a piece, but not as big a piece as it now apparently is. So it's kind of interesting to see how they're
hiring some new people, I think, too, doing more digital stuff there. It'll be interesting. Maybe it's not over for Malay. Maybe he goes back.
Well, who's to say? Second time around.
Maybe this is where he's going.
So he'll be in studio tomorrow. And I think I mentioned in-studio guest on Friday, Andy Luger, is going to join us as well. We're going to get his reaction to the rather tumultuous, and that's putting it way too mildly, weekend that still has repercussions that everybody's kind of reeling from and trying to process. So a busy week yet to come. Let's make this the bottom of the hour pause, catch up with Luigi, who's back in town, not in studio today. He is now.
Well, she sneaks around the world from India to Carolina. She's a sticky-fingered filcher from Berlin down to Belize. She'll take you for a ride on a slow boat to China. Tell me, where in the world is
Lou Nanne?
Brought to you by Kemp's. Luigi is back from the continent, but he is not in studio today. He joins us via the Connecticut Water Systems hotline. I trust that the rest of your trip went extremely well.
It was sensational. It was a terrific trip. Even the climate, it wasn't too hot, and it wasn't too busy yet. It was just starting to get busy, both the Amalfi Coast and Sorrento and also Rome, as a matter of fact. But it was just great.
Outstanding. If you have questions for Luigi on any travel issues you may have, or the National Hockey League and Stanley Cup Final, hit the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line, which is 64686. Tonight, of course, is Game 6. Stuart Skinner will start in goal for the Oilers in Game number 6. They must win to extend the series. Does this goaltender move, is it the right one for Edmonton?
Well, I expected him to be back in the nets. I think they're hoping to replicate what happened when they first played LA, and he was so bad in the first 2 games, came back and played really well. But in this series, he's gone good and bad and good and bad. Now, I think that they're hoping he's going to come back with a top game. He's capable of it. He's big. He's had a pretty good season overall. He's had some downtime, but overall, I think he's their best goaltender, and I think that he gives them the best chance to win. And you can't count them out because they got so much explosiveness in that lineup, especially with McDavid. You know, he finally got his first goal in the series. He's had some assists, so you can always expect more from him, too.
Do you believe it's trickier, the calculus, when it comes to changing a goaltender in the postseason than it is the regular season?
It's not so much it's trickier. You just don't know what you're going to get from the second guy.
Yeah.
You know, you're hoping that he's going to come in and give you a great game, obviously, but you don't know the mindset of the guy. Is he the type of guy that comes in with, you know, not worried about facing pressure? Is he coming in with the attitude that I can't do any worse than the other guy? Is he coming in with the attitude that, you know, I better stop the first shot or I might be right out of there? Where it is, when you got somebody that's proven time and time again, you like to bet on that person. But I know when we were playing in the playoffs that we had 2 goaltenders. We had Meloche and Beaupre, and I think Sommer did a marvelous job with him. You know, I never knew when he was going to change him, when he wanted to change him, but he interchanged him. The year we went to the finals, they both got to play, and they both got to play a lot. But he had extreme confidence in both of them, so he didn't feel he was going to get shortchanged by putting either one of them in, and that helps a great deal. I don't know if I think Knobloch feels that way both about Skinner and Pickard, because Pickard's been in the games a number of times all through his whole playoff for Edmonton. But you still, in your heart, you feel there's one that's the best.
Yeah,
I know
sure.
For Sonmore, he felt it was Meloche. I thought that, you know, Beaupre was every bit as good as that. Beaupre had a marvelous career, terrific career. And it's just that Meloche had, you know, about 10, 12 years on him in pro hockey when we were going through this. So that's why you tend to lean on the guy with more experience.
Did you have those debates back in the day?
No, I mean, I'd ask why he was playing, say, Meloche over Beaupre, or Beaupre this time over Meloche, or at one time it was Gary Edwards with Meloche before we drafted Beaupre. I always like to know his thinking, but I always had the mentality, I'm not going to tell him who to play or when to play him. I'm going to question him, I'm going to probe him, I'm going to try and give him, you know, other outs or other avenues. But I'm never going to say you got to play this guy or that goaltender or whatever, because if you're saying that and then he doesn't, you know, things don't pan out and you got to fire him, then he's going to say, I just did what you told me to do and you're firing me. Which is right.
Yeah.
So you got, in my mind, you have to let the coach play the players that he wants to play. Now, I have a difference of opinion than some general managers in my time, and I think it was more in my time than it is now. But in my time, the general managers pick the players, you know, and his staff. You go through training camp, you got all your scouts, you got everybody there, plus the coach. And at least we did. We had discussions every day in practice who looked good, who looked promising, who should have an opportunity in the lineup, the exhibition games. And we played a lot of exhibition games. We played 12 games. These guys play 6 now. But we gave people a chance to to win a position. Then we'd have a discussion. And at the final, say it was mine. Who was going to be in the lineup? I'm the general manager. I'll pick the players. Now, you play the team I give you, and I expect you to do well with that team. But I'm not going to tell you who to play, how much to play, or when to play him.
If Florida wraps this up either tonight or wins it in 7, is it? I mean, can you give me some kind of perspective here in terms of greatness for this franchise in its current grouping? I guess, are we talking about all-time kind of achievement here, or how would you rank this run?
Well, it's not that I'd say all-time, but it is in this day and age. What Tampa's done, because they've had 3 Stanley Cups in a short period of time, and not only have the Stanley Cups, they lost in the finals, and the same thing with this Florida team. They've lost in the finals, then they won the next round. Now they have an opportunity to win again. So if they win again, you're in the finals 3 times. You win 2, and you're in a much different era than you've ever been, because in this day and age, it's tougher to keep a good team for a long time and keep them together and to win more than once, and especially be in the final 3 years in a row, because you got the salary cap situation, and you're always going to be losing players, and many times it's some of the players you don't want to lose. You take a look at Florida, the guys you lost. One of the guys, Montour, was massive for them in production-wise on defense. But to do it and maintain the kind of team that they've had and achieve what they've achieved, it gets right up there with great teams. Because when you look at the great teams, you look at the Islanders that won 4 in a row, you look at Edmonton won 4 in a row, you look at Montreal that did. Montreal won, I don't know how many in a short time. They had 25 Stanley Cups. Those are all-time things.
Yeah, right.
Well, this ranks right with them because of what they've got to go through to be in that position 3 years in a row.
Yeah, it's a different world now, right, from a lot of those old Canadian teams in terms of movement, salary cap issues, all sorts of other things. A lot of good Wild questions are coming in, Louis, including this one. This is from Matt in Roseville. At this point, even if the Wild wanted to, there are no unrestricted free agent centers worth spending money on, at least in his opinion. Will the Wild have to trade a youngster or a veteran defenseman to get a second competent center? And if so, which players would they part with?
Well, they will part with Rossi if they get the guy they want. I don't think there's any question about that. Just the way they've handled him. Now, I certainly would not be parting with any young defenseman. And when I say young, I'm talking about, Faber, of course, and Museum that they just got, and I'm not so sure I'd get rid of. I know I wouldn't get rid of Brodin either because of his age and the way he plays. So I always like to think that you build from the goal out. The toughest position to get is somebody, a Bobrovsky like Florida's got right now, that they've been riding. If you get a goaltender, and the Wild's goaltender has been good, you don't want to give up the goaltender. Then you don't want to give up defensemen, and then you don't want to give up a top centerman. Then you go to the wings. That's the way I'd look at it. So you can't get ahead by filling a hole by creating another hole. And I think that's something you got to be very careful about.
Are you still convinced they are going to be able to trade Rossi?
Oh, they can trade him. There's no doubt they've got takers.
Mm-hmm.
There's people who would take him. But I don't know what their price is.
Right.
What are you going to get back?
Mm-hmm.
You're giving up your second leading scorer.
Well, that's it.
And until you know you're going to get somebody back. You see, one thing we all have to guard against, it's copycat hockey. In other words, if a team wins because they're fast and really high-scoring team and very mobile, then people, when they're trying to build a team that year, they say, I got to get some guys that can really score, some guys that can really mobile, some guys really fast. Or if the heavy teams win, which Florida is, an aggressive team with a lot of size and a lot of ability to, win battles along the boards, and then there's a tendency to get those kind of guys, and you need both those type players. You have to watch, are you going overboard one to give up the other? The first and most important thing for me, saying that all the players that you're getting are intelligent hockey players, you better have speed. You don't win without speed. And you've got to guard against giving up speed. And then you need tenacity. You need guys that battle. And then, speed and battle, but you got to have some people putting pucks in the net. But you can't win games 1-0, 3-2, depending on your goaltender. You don't want to build a team that's just going to get 6. You're going to get 6. You don't care if you give up 5, because you're going to find a team that can shut you down when you think you're always going to get 5 or 6.
Text from 507. What does Louis think of the players named as the first 6 on the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team?
I think that was a no-brainer. The only thing that surprised me is they didn't put a goaltender like Hellebuck in there as one of the 6. He just won the most valuable player in the league, and he won the Vezina Trophy, and he is an American, and he is the number 1 rated goalie in the league. It's almost, to me, like, come on. If you're going to name 6 players, essentially you're naming defensemen and forwards. You're going to leave the goaltender, the most important guy, out. I just didn't think that was very smart.
This is from texter Tom. What does Louis? What would Louis tell a player like McDavid on a night like tonight on an elimination game? What kind of advice would he give him?
Well, I wouldn't be giving him any advice, because the guy's the best player in the world. I would be telling him, I'd be reminding him, Connor, we're only as good as you are.
Great
That's
point.
what I would tell him.
Yeah.
And, you just give me your best, and we're all going to be happy.
Well, there's always the question of what the other team has attempted to do. Obviously, he's, like you say, he's the best there is. How has he been defensed, in your view, well in this series? Is there something Florida has kicked in on? Because as you mentioned, in terms of goals, he's not been the factor that, folks are accustomed to. What do you think of the Florida approach with him?
Well, the 2 things. One, his goals are because he overpasses sometimes too.
Yeah.
And he's a very selfish player. But what Florida's done very effectively, they're not giving him a lot of space. And the key is picking him up early, because if you let that guy go, if he's coming with speed, you have a hell of a time to try and stop him. He's so good with the puck. And as we said so many times before, he skates with the puck as fast as he does without the puck. And so when a guy's coming down on you with the puck, and he's really fast, and he makes a move, it only takes just a little bit of a lunge by the defender, or a little bit of just hesitation, and he's by you. So what they've done is not allow him to always come with full speed down there. They're closing the gaps on him really fast, real early. So he's not getting time to just freewheel like he's coming off the ice with full speed. He's got to, in an instant, he's got to move away from one guy or another guy to start off. So he's not getting to top speed without being bothered very often. And if you let that guy get to top speed without being bothered, then you got a problem. They've really got tight gaps on him. They're not giving him much space at all.
That's a great point. Yeah, that's the best way to try to deal with somebody of his ability, for sure. Louis joining us as he always does on the Fan. Quite good. A lot of other good questions coming in. Before we mix a couple of those to the list, I was quoting from an athletics story laying out the fact that in Canada, the Stanley Cup Final ratings have been tremendous. Perhaps not particularly surprising, but they've been upwards, I think, of like 4 or 5 million per game, according to the ratings. And of course, it's a country of like 40-some million. Yet in the U.S., the ratings, similar to NBA finals, actually, not so good. And a lot of people they're actually down, in fact, from a year ago. And a lot of people are trying to figure out what that's about. If it's just circumstance, if it's just a coincidence, whether it's because people are tired of the same, Florida again, that there aren't two U.S. teams in there. And the biggest thing that keeps coming up is we're in a world now where, people have different ways to get subscribed to whatever they subscribe to. And so, it's not like over the air back in ABC, NBC, CBS days. Now it's TNT and True TV, I think, for the Stanley Cup Finals. And some people have access to it, and there's still some people who don't. So what's your best theory, if there's any reason to think why the U.S. numbers don't seem to be, very impressive thus far, even though we've had some terrific hockey?
Well, I did say before it started, if Edmonton gets in, the one thing's going to be unique. If your ratings are not going to be as good as if there are two American teams.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. And I'll never forget a conversation that years ago that we had at the Board of Governors when some guys were trying to fight for, when we had 21 teams in the league and Gretzky was in Edmonton, and some of the people in the league wanted to pull some games away from the East Coast teams that were playing each other so much. That being Buffalo, Toronto, Montreal, and New York Rangers and Harrison, and says, no, I'm not giving up games to have Edmonton. And somebody said, you could have Gretzky. And Finland said, he's the best player in the world, yet he's from Edmonton. My people and don't want to see a team from Edmonton. They want to see the Canadians. They want to see the Rangers. They want to see the Maple Leafs.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. It's ridiculous, but it just seems that if you have a Canadian team and against the American team in the U.S., the ratings haven't been getting as high as when there are two American teams in there. And maybe because during the year there's more visibility of American teams than Canadian teams in the U.S., and they're more familiar with those teams, and maybe they like them more and they see them. And the second point is just what you said. Some people don't get TNT and, and
True
TNT,
TV,
et cetera.
Yeah.
And this day and age when you got so much depending on people having streaming for so many things and they can't have it all, some people just don't get it.
Well, part of what was explored in the story is the trade-off of the one thing the NHL did get going non-commercial is more money. And that's always the challenge, is it not, to decide what's more important? We got to get money because that's that's the name of the tune when it comes to salary cap, etc. Or do you end up feeling, well, but we're not giving ourselves the greatest chance for exposure if we're going with TNT or True TV or streaming options as opposed to the good old-fashioned, over-the-air, major commercial network that we all grew up with, ABC, NBC, CBS, etc.?
Well, the fact is they need the money. They got to go for the money. It's just a crime, but it is true. When you look at, say, the four major sports in our world, we think they're major sports. Football, number one, they're getting over $225 million a team before you open the doors. I think baseball's up around $180 million, and basketball's right there too. And then hockey's about $25 million a team.
Yeah.
So, when you're looking at $25 million, say, versus $180 million, $5 million is a significant portion of $25 million versus $5 million, a portion of $180 million. So it's more important for the NHL to get the most money they can, because they're not dealing from strength when it comes to comparing with the other teams, on which choices they should make for television.
Yeah, that's a fair point. And you say, like you say, that money matters. I mean, in a perfect world, it's the best of both worlds, but sometimes those are decisions you have to make. And again, as we talked about a couple weeks ago, in terms of production value, nobody can question the TNT decision at all. It looks good, it feels good, it sounds good, right? Across the board.
I think it's the best there is.
I agree.
Now. I think
absolutely.
He's done a great job.
Tremendous job. So it's hard to argue with that. But many people texted and said, hey, look, man, I get stuff through Max, but then you got to have more than the basic tier on Max to get, they don't include the hockey. And it is so much more complicated, Luigi, for every sport. Really, it's just so much more complicated than it used to be about who's connected with whom and what am I going to get and what am I losing if I go this direction as opposed to that direction. It's a lot more challenging than it customarily has been.
Well, and it's more challenging, especially for hockey, because they have to take situations that other teams, other leagues don't. I mean, they have to go in some of these channels where, the other teams, because they're so popular, the more established cable lines, I'll call them, and standard TV are going to bid more. They're going to get to the point that the major leagues won't need. They're going to get to $225 million, which means they're going to give them $18 billion to start the year or something. Whereas hockey, it's harder for them to come up and justify in their minds paying X amount of dollars on, say, ABC than you would for TNN or what is it?
TNT and True TV. Yeah,
TNN.
Right. Yeah,
they're both same, basically cable channels, but I just don't think that they have the wherewithal, and basically don't have to pay.
Right.
They have to pay more of their money than say ABC would have to pay, because they need the programming. So they do go to a number that basically outbids the other people.
Welcome back to the United States of America. Good to have you back, and I'm off next week, but we will talk to you soon, Gaardsy, maybe even as soon as next week.
Okay, look forward to it. You take care.
You too. Thanks, Luigi. Appreciate you.
Thanks. I'll see you guys. Yep.
Lou Nanne, brought to you by our good friends at Kemp's State. Is your apology to P.J. Fleck? See the latest recruiting news? Speaking of recruiting, we were just talking about this earlier.
Was this the El Paso kid?
Yes.
Yeah, I did see this.
We fended off Michigan and Bama.
Is that right?
For a Texas running back named Ryan Estrada. He comes from El Dorado High School in El Paso, Texas.
You had a great donut there one night, if I remember.
Oh, it was a bad night for me. That's how I ushered in the millennium.
Yeah,
and I
Sun Bowl,
still haven't recovered
or forgiven Mace.
He announced on X that he's joining the Gophers 2026 recruiting class. He's listed as 5'9". Seems a little small, a little short for me. 195. Okay. Rushed for 2,261 yards and 33 touchdowns. Averaged, are you ready for it? 14.7 yards per carry.
That's all I have to
during
say.
his junior season. Now, I'm confused, though. Why isn't he a 4 or a 5-star? If Michigan,
is he not?
He's listed here as a 3-star recruit. Seems to be a contradiction in terms to me. Or do we get too hung up on the stars?
I think we do a little bit, because there's only a certain number of 5s and 4s that they can hand out mathematically.
He's the 39th ranked player in Texas. Texas obviously is a great state for,
so I've heard,
prep football. 20th ranked running back nationally, which still be very creditable if that's true. 11 scholarship offers from Power 4 programs.
Sky-U-Ma.
We are calling this, I guess the bit we're going with is the Summer Splash recruiting weekends, right?
Yes, that's what they've gone with the last few years.
Summer Splash recruiting weekends. So we're going for good alliteration there. So we've got, right now, with the addition of Estrada, I wonder if he's any relation to Eric Estrada. Remember him? You old enough to remember him?
Yes.
Probably more than one Estrada in the world, I'm guessing.
Most likely.
But you never know. Be a distant relative.
Yeah.
Wasn't he Chips guy? The TV show Chips?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Minnesota now has 22 commitments in its 2026 class, including 12 players in the 2 Summer Splash weekends. Through this afternoon, we have the 13th ranked class nationally, 7th among Big Ten teams by 247 Sports. Now, again, it's still early in the process. But
just stop there for a second.
But
say that.
Yeah.
13th, half of them in the top 14.
Well, that's because half the teams who play college football now are in the Big Ten.
That's part of the point, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that's, that's in the second third of Big Ten teams.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
Because there's 18, I think. I'm not sure.
I think it's 18 right now. Yeah, for now.
So 7th would be in the second third, I think, which is crazy that it can be 13th in the country at any moment and yet clinging to top half of the Big Ten. It says a lot about the conference right now.
612 guy writes, settle down, Dan. He still has plenty of time to decommit, which I guess is technically true.
That is about, how many times do you think that gets said?
20 times a day.
Anytime there's an announcement on any June recruiting commitment, which I think we all understand, of course that could happen. By the way, he could also get here and transfer after a year.
Yeah.
Right? Like
also, all bets are off.
Everything is ephemeral now in college football. But
100%.
It's been, for the northern teams, the ability to bring prospects to their campus in the summer has been, I think, helpful to show them that it's not a barren wasteland every second that they're here.
We were talking earlier about prep coverage and how that's evolving. How a lot of us who are ink-stained wretches on the sports department got our start. You start at the quote unquote bottom, in the pecking order at least, and you covered high school stuff. You covered prep sports. And then I was talking about the Star Tribune push to add, to emphasize their prep coverage in this digital age. And Andy from Apple Valley was apparently listening at that point. I don't know if he still is because that was earlier in the show. And he writes, hard to read an article on the Strib when it's behind a paywall. And occasionally we've had these discussions.
It's another thing that gets said a lot.
But it does get said a lot. And I'm just left sort of shaking my head that how we got to a place where people feel that a publication has to apologize for having a paywall. I mean, once upon a time before the internet existed, if you wanted to read the Star Tribune, you had to buy a paper. You had to subscribe to a paper, or I guess you could find one in the cafeteria that you hadn't read.
Or the library.
Or that someone else had brought in, or the library, whatever
Doctor's
the case
office.
may be. But it was understood that, they are providing a service. You have to decide whether it's worthy of your time and or your pocketbook. But it wasn't considered outlandish that if you walked into a grocery store, they're going to make you pay for the newspaper. They're not going to say, you just walk out with this paper, it's free.
Right.
This is no different, boys and girls. Presumably it's understood that if you're paying people to provide the information for this service, those folks want to get compensated. And as it is, they're not getting compensated the way they might have been. There's not the same level of commitment. But we got to get past this notion that there's something nefarious about these newspapers or magazines.
It's crazy.
Who are daring you to make them pay for the product. Clearly, you don't have to pay for it, but you sure as hell shouldn't and can't be, I don't think, surprised that there might be a pay. There might be an amount of money that you're going to have to pay to get access to that stuff. It's just so curious to me. Now, you could say that's where newspapers made their mistake. Before they understood what the world of the internet was, they did make it free before they made you pay. And it's hard to go back. And I understand that to a degree, but we shouldn't be surprised that eventually they were going to have to come to a place where there had to be something added to the economic model that indicates we can't, if we constantly give all of this away for free, we're making it so easy that we're hurting our own chances to nurture this product, maintain it, and perhaps even perish the thought, actually build around it. How did we get to this place?
I don't know. I honestly have no idea.
Childish.
And and this is talking. You and I are two people that have two subscriptions to The Athletic.
Well, yeah, that's
right?
true too. Yeah,
but I'll never understand it. I've never understood it. It actually frustrates me.
Yeah,
because just the tone and the attitude,
exactly.
Like, oh, there you go again.
Yeah.
This business that's employing people, that are paying people to work and put the resources behind these stories, are actually asking me to pay for it. Anything that's free, by the way, also has a cost somewhere, right? Somebody's paying it.
Yes, exactly.
Nothing is free.
No.
So whether it's we're free, why? Because every 12 minutes or so we say, we'll be back after this. Come back for Lou Nanne or the Top 5 at 5.
Yes.
And then we hear from some people that are helping pay for all of this.
Correct.
Everything has a cost. It's very, very strange.
What world are you living in? I mean, you want to talk about privilege. Stuff's not owed you in that regard. And again, that doesn't mean you could say, well, that's not worth it to me. Whatever those subscription numbers are, even online, I don't want to do it. I respect that. Everybody can make their own choice, but to act like, can't read, how do I read the articles? They're behind a paywall. No bleep. That's the point. They have a product. Just like any other product you go out and get, you make decisions on, is it worth it or not worth it? But you sure as hell, that tone is bizarre to me.
Nice paywall.
Yeah. Oh, well, okay. You want people to read them, but you won't let them read them unless you make them pay? Yeah. That's how the system works. I thought we were all capitalists. I thought we all believed in this nonsense.
Sidebar, if you're looking, I got two quick things. If you're looking for something free, the iHeartRadio app is free. It's very easy to download and very easy to use. And you can make KFAN one of your presets.
Boom.
It's very easy to do that. It's free for everybody that wants to use it. You know, one thing I miss is the old days. I don't even know if they have these anymore, but what do you even call them? Where you would buy the newspaper just on the street.
I know what you mean.
Not like the newsstand.
Those machines.
The machine.
Yeah, right.
And when I was a kid, it was a quarter,
Yes.
and then it was 50 cents, and I'm sure it was 75.
And a buck.
There was nothing better than grabbing a quarter, throwing it in there, slinging the door open, getting the paper. You had to get out there quick because the recoil would get you.
That's right.
You had to be careful. And when I was a kid, probably when I'm like 18, 19,
Sliding
20.
that thing open and grabbing a newspaper.
It's the best ever.
The world at your fingertips.
It was unbelievable, and I could see who Dan Barrero was ripping needlessly on, well, I assume it was Mason, but I could see who Dan was mad at.
There were several others occasionally, including some folks who have relatives that you know.
Show Wrap is presented by American Pressure, commercial-grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the bumper-to-bumper Show Wrap.
The tweet response of today on the Bumper to Bumper show must be this. We were talking earlier about the rather infamous moment in Golden Gopher baseball history. Their World Series elimination game in, what year did we say? 1973, I believe.
Yes.
David Winfield pitched 8 1/3 innings, and he had given up 1 hit and no runs through 8 innings, and then ran into problems in the 9th and ultimately was pulled. And the Gophers blew a 7-0 lead with 1 out in the 9th and lost 8-7. And we were reminded that Winfield threw 165 pitches. John Mose tweets, Rocco just drove off the road when he heard that Winfield threw 165 pitches in a game on 3 days. 3 days rest. Think about it.
Rocco might actually be okay with it. I think it's the front office
you might
and
be right, yeah.
the sports performance analyst.
Very, very true, Davey.
Rocco might say, let him go.
Correct.
But yes, that's all the. Kernan had to have loved that game, right? Kevin Kernan would have loved Dave Winfield's performance in that game, but he would have said the nerds would never let it happen.
Dan, you're skipping over the reason why readers complain about the paywall. No, we didn't skip over them. We were responding to one of them was responding to our conversation. And unlike this texter, he didn't talk about teasers, because he writes, teasers posted by the Star Tribune on social media are juicy and enticing, but when you click on the juicy teaser, you hit a paywall. This is frustrating. Alert! Yeah,
it's called advertising.
It's the real world, man. Grow the bleep up. New York Times does this as well. Really? Who knew? Are we not all in the sales business, for God's sake? To varying degrees?
You know what I do wish they would do?
It's just so bizarre.
What I don't understand why they haven't done this, because I think this would happen more. I don't know if it must just be too hard to set it up, but I wish there were more situations where I can't subscribe to every newspaper in the country as much as I'd like to, right? You got to pick and choose.
Yes, correct.
I'd like to, just like streaming services, you can't subscribe to all of them. I wish there was a way that I want to read something out of Columbus, the Dispatch.
Right.
Yeah, actually, there's a Boston Globe article about Minnesota hockey and Massachusetts hockey that I've been waiting to read for 6 months.
Yes, that's where it gets funky.
And could I just pay $1.50
for? Yes,
just
I get
for that for one article?
I understand that part
because I know in some places give you 3 free ones or 5 free ones, and you've got to have. But it's especially during a
lot of magazines do that. They say, okay, here's you got 5 free articles for the month.
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
That's great.
Yes.
That's helpful. But there's some that don't even offer that.
No, you're right. They immediately go to here's the subscription ideas.
But I'd rather just pay $1 or $2 or $5 if it's a story I'm that interested in, just as a one-off. That I wish they could do.
Dan, why do you demand that us, the working poor, spend all of our extra? Oh my God! Hold on. Let me. Squirrel, I should say, go down. Spend all of our extra shekels on your beloved former newspaper. It should be free, free, free. Now, excuse me while I stage a sit-in at DQ until they give me a free dilly bar. That's from Oldsmobile guy.
That's all I have to say.
Another one, 651. News business is run on ad revenue. Paywalls are bogus. They're run on both. They have a right. Again, you have a right to say no. I don't think you have a right to whine about it and be surprised. Now, you can say, well, that price. Somebody had tweeted earlier in response to this discussion. Let me see if I can find it. Star Tribune charges more than the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, $270 a year. I don't know if that's accurate, but I'll say you have to decide. Every decision, you're not obligated to do any of it. But different outlets are going to do different things. And when you say there's a problem with it, my understanding is that by Metro newspaper standards, the Star Tribune, from a digital standpoint, still is doing better than almost every major metropolitan metro paper. New York Times is doing great. Wall Street Journal, those are national publications.
Yep.
Also doing well. I think, based on what I've heard, the Star Tribune is doing relatively well. So people are allowed to make their decisions, but stop complaining about, just give it to us. Come on, I just want the info. I want the story. I want the information. And you're bothered by being teased? Come on, man.
That's all I have to say.
Let's grow up let's get real here. Let's be adults about the situation.
Okay, have you heard about this? Last year, Degree changed the formula for their Cool Rush deodorant. Their fans rebelled and wanted the old scent back. And Degree listened. That doesn't happen often.
They admitted that they effed up and are bringing the original Cool Rush scent back. And it's exactly how you remember it. Cool, crisp, and fresh. There's a reason it's the #1 men's antiperspirant. And it's back in Walmart, Target, and other stores for under $4.
So try it and see what the fuss is about. Head to your local stores to try the OG Cool Rush for yourself.